My mother looked me dead in the eyes and swore we were bankrupt. She squeezed my hand, tears streaming down her face, and told me the family vacation to Dubai was impossible for me because my ticket had been declined due to insufficient funds. She said I had to stay behind to save the family from financial ruin. 10 minutes later, I watched from behind the security glass as my unemployed brother dropped a boarding pass on the floor. It was not for economy class. It was for an Emirates first-class private suite. And the notification that buzzed on my phone right at that second showed exactly who paid for it. Me. I did not scream. I did not chase them. I just pulled out my phone and initiated the most ruthless audit of my life. My name is Zara, and I am 35 years old. To the outside world, and especially to my family, I am just a boring number cruncher who works in a cubicle downtown. They think I file tax returns for small businesses. They have no idea that I am actually a senior forensic accountant for one of the top firms in Atlanta. My job is to hunt down hidden assets, expose corporate fraud, and send billionaires to prison for financial crimes. I can find a single missing cent in a ledger of billions. Yet for my entire adult life, I could not see the theft happening right under my own nose, because the thieves were the people I called family. If you have ever been the bank account for people who do not respect you, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe if you want to see how I turned a family vacation into a federal investigation. The humidity outside Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport was suffocating, but it was nothing compared to the heat radiating from the mountain of luggage my brother Dante was unloading from the SUV. We were standing at the curbside check-in surrounded by the chaos of travelers, but my family looked like they were shooting a music video. My mother Bernice was draped in a caftan that I knew cost more than my mortgage payment. She was adjusting her oversized sunglasses, looking around to make sure people were watching her. This was supposed to be our family reunion trip, a once-in-a-lifetime vacation to Dubai, to celebrate my mother beating a minor health scare. I had contributed $3,000 in cash last week just to cover my share and help with the hotel deposits. I had worked 60-hour weeks for months to clear my schedule for this. Zara, baby, come here. My mother's voice was trembling. She grabbed my hands, her palms clammy. We have a problem. A big problem. The travel agent just called. There was a glitch with the booking system. Your ticket was canceled. I stared at her confused. What do you mean canceled? We have the confirmation numbers. I gave you the cash myself. I know, she wailed, drawing the attention of a passing porter. But when they tried to rebook it, the price had tripled. Zara, look at us. We are barely scraping by. The house needs repairs. Dante's business is struggling. We just do not have the extra $5,000 they are asking for to get you on the plane. I looked at the luggage cart. It was stacked high with Louis Vuitton trunks. Not knockoffs. Real ones. I knew because I know how to spot a fake stitch from a mile away. Mom, I said, my voice low. We can fix this at the counter. I have my credit card. I can pay the difference. No. Dante stepped between us. He was wearing a Gucci tracksuit and enough gold chains to anchor a small boat. He is 38 years old, has not held a steady job in a decade, yet somehow always has the newest iPhone. You cannot come, Zara. It is not just the ticket. It is the food, the excursions. We are broke. Mom had to take out a payday loan just to cover the hotel tax. If you come, you will just be a burden. You know how expensive you can be. Expensive. I am the one who pays the cell phone bills for everyone standing in this circle. I am the one who paid for the car Dante drove us here in. Tiffany, my sister-in-law, chimed in. She was checking her reflection in her compact mirror, her blonde hair perfectly styled. Honestly, Zara, maybe it is for the best. Dubai is very high fashion, very glam. You would probably feel uncomfortable there anyway. You know, with your department store aesthetic. Plus, someone needs to watch my dog. Princess only eats Wagyu beef and the kennel just does not understand her dietary needs. She tossed a set of keys at me. I caught them reflexively. "So that is it?" I asked, looking at my mother. "You are leaving me here?" At the curb, after I paid my share, Bernice wiped a tear that I was pretty sure she forced out. "It breaks my heart, baby. It really does. But God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. You are the strong one, Zara. You stay here and hold down the fort. You save us that money. It is the Christian thing to do." She hugged me, but she did not squeeze. It was a performance hug. A hug for the audience, not for the daughter. "We have to go," Dante said, checking his watch. "Check-in closes in 40 minutes. Bye, Zara. Try not to burn the city down while we are gone." They turned their backs on me. Just like that. I stood there in my sensible travel clothes, my single carry-on bag at my feet, watching my family march toward the terminal entrance like royalty. They did not look back. Not once. I should have called a cab right then. I should have gone home, cried into a pillow, and accepted my role as the family doormat. That is what the old Zara would have done. But something in my gut, that professional instinct that tells me when a balance sheet does not add up, told me to follow them. I kept my distance. I pulled my cap down low and trailed them into the massive atrium of the international terminal. I watched them bypass the long winding lines for economy class. I watched them walk right past the business class counters. They headed straight for the private check-in area for Emirates first class. My breath caught in my throat. First-class tickets to Dubai were not $5,000. They were $20,000 a person. If they were broke, if mom needed a payday loan, how were they walking on the red carpet? I hid behind a large potted plant near the security checkpoint entrance. I watched as the concierge greeted them by name. I watched porters rush to take their Louis Vuitton bags. My mother was laughing now, the tears miraculously gone. She was snapping selfies with Dante, holding up a glass of champagne that had been handed to her before she even got her boarding pass. Dante was gesturing wildly, telling some story to the check-in agent. He spun around to high-five Tiffany, and in his excitement, a piece of paper fluttered out of his back pocket and landed on the polished floor. They moved through the private security line, laughing, high-fiving, completely unbothered by the fact that they had just abandoned their daughter and sister on the sidewalk. Once they were through the metal detectors and out of sight, I walked over to the spot where Dante had stood. I looked down. It was a boarding pass stub. I picked it up. My hands were trembling not from sadness, but from a cold, rising rage. Passenger Dante Williams, Seat 1A, first-class private suite. I did the math in my head instantly. 4 people, first class. That was at least $80,000 in airfare alone. Where did they get $80,000? Dante's bank account was constantly overdrawn. Mom lived on a fixed pension that I supplemented. My phone buzzed in my hand. It was a text alert from my bank. Chase fraud protection alert. Did you authorize a charge of $25,000 at Atlanta Duty Free International? I stared at the screen. $25,000. I opened my banking app. My fingers flew across the screen. I checked my primary account. Normal. I checked my savings. Normal. Then I checked the emergency account. The one with the platinum card I had issued to my mother 3 years ago when she had to have gallbladder surgery. I had told her it was for life or death medical emergencies only. I had put it in the safe in her house and told her to forget it existed unless she was in an ambulance. The balance was maxed out. There were charges for Emirates Airlines, charges for the Ritz-Carlton Dubai, charges for Louis Vuitton, and just now a $25,000 charge for watches and jewelry at the airport. They didn't just leave me. They stole from me to do it. They used my credit, my hard-earned money, my credit score that I had protected with my life to fund the vacation. They told me I was too poor to attend. I looked up from my phone. Through the glass partition of the upper level, I could see the entrance to the VIP lounge. I saw them. I saw Dante sitting in a plush leather chair eating a steak. I saw my mother showing off a new gold bracelet to Tiffany. I saw Tiffany laughing, feeding a piece of expensive chocolate to her son. They were feasting on my blood, sweat, and tears. I did not cry. Forensic accountants do not cry at crime scenes. We document them. I raised my phone and took a photo of the boarding pass. I zoomed in and took a photo of them in the lounge. I took a screenshot of the banking alert. Then I opened the family group chat. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to scream at them in all caps. I wanted to tell them I was calling the police right now. But that would be too easy. That would stop them from getting on the plane. If they didn't get on the plane, they would be here in Atlanta begging, pleading, making scenes. No. I wanted them in Dubai. I wanted them thousands of miles away spending money they thought they had stolen successfully. I wanted them to feel safe. I typed, "Have a safe flight. I will water the plants and take care of the dog. Love you all." I hit send. I watched through the glass as they checked their phones. I saw Dante read it and laugh. He showed the phone to Tiffany, who rolled her eyes. My mother didn't even look at her screen. Bernice replied a moment later. "Thanks, baby. We will bring you back a keychain. Pray for us." I pocketed my phone. I turned around and walked out of the airport. The heat hit me again, but this time I didn't feel it. I felt cold. Ice cold. I pulled out my phone again and dialed a number I had never used for personal matters. "Hello?" a crisp voice answered. "Sarah, it is Zara," I said, my voice steady, void of any emotion. "Zara, it is Saturday. Is everything okay?" "No," I said, walking toward the rideshare pickup. "I need you to open a new file. Code red. Code red." "Who is the target?" Sarah asked, her tone shifting instantly to professional alert. "The target is Bernice Williams, Dante Williams, and Tiffany Miller," I said. "Your family?" Sarah asked, a pause in her voice. "No," I corrected her. "Not my family. The subjects. I want a full forensic audit of every single asset, liability, and transaction associated with their names going back 10 years. I want to know where every dime went. I want to know who holds the deed to my mother's house. I want to know who actually owns Dante's LLC. And Sarah, yes, Zara. Get the legal team on the line. I want to draft an eviction notice and a seizure of assets order. By the time they land in Dubai, I want to own the air they breathe." I hung up the phone and got into the back of a black sedan. They thought I was just a receptionist who was good at math. They thought I was the quiet, ugly duckling who would always pay the bill to be included. They forgot what I actually do for a living. I hunt predators. And I had just found 3 of the greediest ones I had ever seen. The car pulled away from the curb. I watched the planes taking off overhead. Enjoy the champagne, mother. Enjoy the caviar, Dante. Because when you come back, you won't even have a front door to unlock. I leaned back in the seat and closed my eyes. The audit had begun. The ride from the airport to the Buckhead estate was a blur of silence and cold fury. I sat in the back of the black sedan, watching the city of Atlanta roll by, my mind operating like a computer processing a corrupted hard drive. I did not shed a single tear. Tears were for people who had hope, and I had none left for the people who shared my DNA. When the car pulled up to the wrought iron gates of my childhood home, I felt a familiar pang in my chest. This was the house my father had bought with his first big bonus, the house where I had learned to walk, the house he had made me promise to protect on his deathbed. Now it was just a crime scene. I paid the driver and stood before the massive oak front door. Tiffany had thrown the keys at me like I was the help telling me to feed her dog. I gripped the cold metal key in my hand. They thought I was coming here to be their servant. They thought I would water the hydrangeas and scoop kibble into a bowl while they sipped champagne at 30,000 feet. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air conditioning was blasting, a luxury my mother claimed she could not afford. The foyer was exactly as they had left it, cluttered with the debris of their frantic packing. Shoe boxes, discarded outfit options, and empty shopping bags littered the marble floor. It smelled of expensive perfume and rot. I walked straight to the kitchen. My mother's voice echoed in my head, wailing about how they were starving, how they were scraping pennies together for groceries. I pulled open the double doors of the Sub-Zero refrigerator. It was packed. There were rows of organic vegetables, imported cheeses, bottles of premium water, and prime cuts of steak. There was a jar of truffle oil that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. There were containers of caviar tucked in the butter compartment. They were not broke. They were feasting. They were living like royalty while begging me for gas money. I took out my phone and snapped photos of the contents, ensuring the timestamps were visible. This was Exhibit A. The poverty plea was a lie. I closed the fridge door with a soft click. I did not scream. I did not throw anything. I simply turned and walked toward the east wing of the house. That was where my father's study used to be. Now it was Dante's office. My brother liked to play the part of the venture capitalist. He spent his days in there supposedly making deals and building empires. In reality, he was spending his days burning through my mother's pension and apparently my credit limits. The door was locked. Of course it was. Dante was paranoid about his privacy, which in my line of work is usually the first sign of a guilty conscience. I did not bother looking for a key. I went to the garage, found a crowbar in my father's old tool chest, and walked back to the study. One sharp thrust, one loud crack of splintering wood, and the door swung open. The room was a shrine to Dante's ego. There were framed photos of him shaking hands with local celebrities, likely paid photo ops. There were fake awards on the shelves, but I wasn't interested in the decor. I went straight for the closet where I knew the wall safe was hidden behind a portrait of himself. I pulled the painting down. The safe was there, a heavy digital model. Dante was not a complicated man. He was arrogant, and arrogant people usually used passwords that were easy to remember. I tried his birthday. Error. I tried his son's birthday. Error. Then I tried the date our father died. The light turned green. The lock clicked. I felt a surge of nausea. He used the worst day of my life as the code to hide his sins. I pulled the heavy door open. Inside, there were no stacks of cash or gold bars. It was paperwork. Piles and piles of disorganized, crumpled paperwork. I pulled the stack out and dumped it onto the mahogany desk. I sat down in his leather chair and began to sort. The first layer was gambling debts, markers from casinos in Atlantic City, Las Vegas, and even a few underground spots right here in Atlanta. Tens of thousands of dollars in IOUs. He was not investing in startups. He was betting on black and losing every single time. He was a degenerate gambler and he was using the family funds to cover his losses. I photographed every single marker. Then I found the loan documents, predatory loans with interest rates that would make a loan shark blush. He had borrowed money from everyone and he was defaulting on all of it. But the real knife in the heart was at the bottom of the stack. It was a thick blue folder with the logo of a mortgage lender I recognized. I opened it and my breath hitched in my throat. It was a deed of trust. A second mortgage on the house. And then a third. The house was completely leveraged. There was no equity left. They had drained every single cent of value out of my father's legacy. But that was not the worst part. To take out a mortgage, you need the consent of all owners. My name was on the deed. My father had left the house to my mother and me jointly to ensure she would always have a home, but couldn't sell it without me. I flipped to the signature page. There on the dotted line was my name, Zara Williams. It was a good forgery. He had practiced. But he missed the way I crossed my Z. He had traced an old signature from a birthday card, I realized. Dante had committed a felony. He had stolen my identity, forged my signature, and put my inheritance into debt to fund his gambling addiction and my mother's delusions of grandeur. I took the document and held it up to the light, taking a high-resolution photo of the forged signature. This was prison time. This was 10 to 20 years in federal prison for bank fraud. I sat back in the chair, feeling the cold leather against my back. I should have been devastated. I should have been weeping for the loss of my home. But all I felt was a cold, clinical satisfaction. They had handed me the weapon I needed to destroy them. I continued digging through the safe, looking for bank statements, looking for the trail of where the money went. I found receipts for the Dubai trip. I found the receipt for the first-class upgrades. They had booked it 3 weeks ago. They had planned this for a month. The scene at the airport, the tears, the panic about the declined card, It was all a script, a performance to get me to hand over cash and stay behind so they could use my credit card without me noticing. I reached for the last envelope in the back of the safe. It looked different from the others. It was cheap, thin paper already yellowing at the edges. It was unopened. I looked at the return address. Sunny Meadows Extended Care Facility. I frowned. I did not know anyone at a care facility. I looked at the addressee, Mrs. Hazel Washington. My blood turned to ice in my veins. My hands started to shake uncontrollably. Hazel Washington was my grandmother, my mother's mother. Grandma Hazel had died 2 years ago. I remembered the phone call, my mother screaming, wailing that Grandma had passed away in her sleep. I remembered the funeral. It was a closed casket because my mother said Grandma wanted us to remember her as she was not as a shell. I remembered the obituary. I remembered sending $5,000 to help cover the burial costs because my mother said there was no insurance. I remembered visiting the grave and putting flowers on the fresh dirt. I ripped the envelope open. It was a billing statement, dated last week. To the guardian of Hazel Washington. This is a final notice. Your account is 6 months past due. Failure to bring the balance current within 30 days will result in the discharge of the resident to a state facility. Please contact us immediately. My vision blurred. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. Grandma Hazel was not dead. She was alive. She was in a cheap, run-down nursing home somewhere on the outskirts of the city. My mother had faked her own mother's death. She had staged a funeral. She had bought a casket. She had buried an empty box in the ground. She had accepted condolences, flowers, and money from friends and family. She had let me grieve for 2 years. Why I frantically searched the safe for more. I found a power of attorney document signed by Grandma Hazel 3 years ago, giving full control of her finances to my mother. And then I found the bank statements for Grandma Hazel's account. Grandma had a pension, a good one from her 40 years as a union teacher. She had Social Security. She had a small life savings. Every month the money came in, and every month it was transferred out to an account named Dante Enterprises LLC. They locked her away. They told the world she was dead so no one would go looking for her. And they were siphoning her pension to pay for Gucci bags and first-class tickets. I stood up so fast the chair toppled over behind me. A primal scream built in my throat, but I swallowed it down. It burned like acid. This was not just fraud. This was evil. This was a level of depravity I had not seen in my entire career hunting down career criminals. My mother, the woman who sat in the front pew at church every Sunday wearing her big hats and singing the loudest hymns, had buried her living mother in a hole of a nursing home and told the world she was with Jesus just so she could steal her monthly check. I grabbed the papers, I grabbed the photos, I grabbed the laptop sitting on the desk. I needed to see her. I needed to see Grandma Hazel. I needed to know she was real, that this wasn't some twisted hallucination. I ran out of the house. I did not lock the door. I did not care if the whole place burned to the ground. I got into my car and punched the address of Sunny Meadows into my GPS. It was 40 minutes away, in a part of town where the streetlights didn't work and the roads were full of potholes. I drove like a woman possessed. My mind was racing, connecting dots I hadn't even known existed. The closed casket, the quick cremation my mother had insisted on later for the body. The way she refused to let me visit the nursing home when Grandma was sick before she died. It all made sense now. The cruelty, the greed. It was bottomless. I pulled up to Sunny Meadows. It was a brick building that looked more like a prison than a home. The grass was overgrown. There was trash in the parking lot. I walked up to the front desk. The receptionist looked up, bored, chewing gum. "I am here to see Hazel Washington," I said, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and terror. The receptionist frowned. "Visiting hours are over, honey. And I think she is on the list for transfer anyway. Family ain't paid in months." I slammed my hand on the desk. "I am the family, and I am paying right now. Take me to her." Something in my eyes must have terrified her because she stood up immediately and buzzed me through the door. Down the hall, room 104. I walked down the corridor. It smelled of bleach and despair. I counted the numbers. 100, 102, 104. The door was open. I stepped inside. It was a tiny room with 2 beds. In the bed by the window, a small, frail figure was curled up under a thin blanket. I walked closer. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard it hurt. I reached out and touched the shoulder of the woman in the bed. "Grandma," I whispered. The figure stirred. She turned over slowly. Her hair was completely white now, thin and wispy. Her face was gaunt, her cheekbones sharp against her skin. But the eyes, those eyes were the same. She blinked, trying to focus. She looked at me, confusion clouding her gaze. "Zara?" She croaked, her voice dry and brittle like dead leaves. "Is that you, baby?" I fell to my knees beside the bed. I grabbed her hand. It was warm. She was alive. "Oh my God, Grandma!" I sobbed, burying my face in her hand. "I thought you were dead. Mom told me you were dead." She gripped my hand with surprising strength. She tried to sit up, her eyes wide with panic and clarity. "She told you I was dead?" Grandma Hazel asked, her voice shaking. "Yes," I cried. "We had a funeral. We buried you. Why are you here?" Tears spilled down her wrinkled cheeks. She looked at the door as if expecting my mother to burst in and punish her. "She told me you didn't want me anymore," Grandma whispered. "She told me you were too busy with your big job to take care of an old woman. She made me sign the papers, Zara. She said if I signed the papers, she would put me in a nice place with a garden. She said she would visit every Sunday." She looked around the dreary room. "She never came back, Zara. She dropped me off, and she never came back. I have been waiting for you. I prayed every night that you would find me." I stood up. The grief vanished, replaced by a cold, hard resolve that felt like armor plating snapping into place around my soul. I wiped my face. I looked at my grandmother, this woman who had braided my hair and taught me to read, who had been discarded like garbage by the woman she gave birth to. "I am getting you out of here, Grandma," I said. "Right now." "But the money," she worried. "Bernice said there is no money." "Bernice lied," I said. "Bernice has plenty of money. She is currently flying first class to Dubai, using my credit card and your pension." Grandma Hazel gasped. "Do not worry about the money," I said, pulling out my phone. "I have plenty of money. And by the time Bernice lands, I am going to have all of hers too." I dialed the number for the private ambulance service my firm used for high-profile medical transports. "This is Zara Williams," I said into the phone. "I need a priority extraction, Sunny Meadows Nursing Home. I want the VIP transport to Emory University Hospital, private suite, 24-hour security detail, bill it to my firm." I hung up and looked at my grandmother. "You are going to be okay, Grandma. You are going to have the best doctors, the best food, and the softest bed in Atlanta." "And Mom?" she asked, fear still lingering in her eyes. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Mom is going to have a very different kind of homecoming," I said. I took a picture of my grandmother holding today's newspaper from the bedside table. I sent it to my assistant Sarah with a single line of text. "Add kidnapping and elder abuse to the file. Freeze everything, even the library cards." Then I sat down on the edge of the bed and held my grandmother's hand, waiting for the ambulance, while my mind began to construct the trap that would snap shut the moment my family stepped off that plane. They wanted a vacation. I was going to give them an eviction. I sat on the edge of the thin, lumpy mattress in room 104, holding a hand that felt as fragile as antique parchment. The air in the room was stale, a suffocating mixture of industrial cleaner and hopelessness, but right now all I could focus on was the rhythmic, wheezing breath of the woman I had mourned for 2 years. My grandmother Hazel Washington was not a ghost. She was warm, she was trembling, and she was looking at me with a mixture of adoration and terrifying confusion that broke my heart into 1,000 irreparable pieces. I needed to understand. The forensic accountant in my brain was screaming for a timeline, for a paper trail, for the logic behind the crime, because even though I stared at the evidence, my soul refused to accept that my mother could be this monstrous. I gently squeezed her hand, terrified that even a little pressure might bruise her paper-thin skin. "Grandma," I said, keeping my voice soft but steady, "I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Take your time." She coughed, a dry, rattling sound that made me reach for the plastic pitcher on the bedside table. It was empty. Of course it was empty. I stood up, marched to the small sink in the corner, and filled a paper cup with tap water. As I helped her drink, I noticed the bruises on her forearms. They were old, yellow and green, likely from bumping into bed rails or rough handling by overworked staff. When she finally settled back against the flat pillow, she looked at me with eyes that were surprisingly clear. The fog of sleep was lifting, and the sharp, intelligent woman who had taught 30 years of high school English was surfacing. "It started with the heart palpitations," she whispered, her voice gaining a little strength. "About 3 years ago. You remember. I went to the hospital." I nodded. I remembered. I had paid the deductible. "Bernice told me I needed to go into assisted living for a few weeks just for rehab," she continued. "She said the house was too big for me to manage alone while I recovered. She brought me the papers, Zara. She said they were admission forms for a place called Whispering Pines. She said it was a luxury resort for seniors." I closed my eyes for a second. Whispering Pines was a 5-star facility in Buckhead. It cost $10,000 a month. This place, Sunny Meadows, was a dumping ground that probably cost a fraction of that. "I signed them," Grandma said, tears pooling in her eyes again. "I didn't read them, baby. I trusted her. She is my daughter. She said she needed power of attorney just to handle the insurance companies because my hands were too shaky to sign checks." Power of attorney, the most dangerous weapon in the financial world when placed in the wrong hands. It gave my mother total control. She became Hazel Washington in the eyes of the law. And then I asked, dreading the answer. "Then she brought me here," she said, looking around the drab room with a shudder. "She said Whispering Pines was full and this was just temporary. A week," she said, "just until a room opened up." But then she came back a week later. She was crying. She said the market crashed. She said my pension fund was gone. She said I was bankrupt, Zara. I felt the blood drain from my face. My grandmother had a pension from the state teachers union. It was bulletproof. It didn't crash with the market. It was a fixed, guaranteed income for life. Plus, she had Social Security, and she had the life insurance policy my grandfather had left her. She was not rich, but she was comfortable. She should have been the queen of the bingo hall, not a prisoner in this dungeon. She told me I had nothing left. Grandma continued, her voice trembling with the memory of that betrayal. She said the only reason I could stay here was because she was paying for it out of her own pocket. She told me I was a burden. She said I had to stay quiet and do what the nurses said, because if I caused trouble, they would put me on the street. "And me?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Why didn't you call me?" She looked away, shame coloring her cheeks. "She took my phone, Zara. She said I didn't need it. And she told me you were the one who suggested it. The air left my lungs. She said you were busy with your big career." Grandma sobbed. "She said you didn't have time to visit a sick old woman. She said you were ashamed of me being sick." And then a few months later, she came in wearing all black. "She told me you had moved to London for a promotion and that you said you weren't coming back." I gripped the bed rail so hard my knuckles turned white. My mother had played us against each other perfectly. She told me Grandma was dead to get the funeral money and the sympathy. She told Grandma I had abandoned her to keep her silent and compliant. It was a masterclass in isolation. "Did she ever come back?" I asked. "Sometimes," Grandma said. "Once a month, maybe. To bring me toiletries, toothpaste, soap. The cheap kind." and to make me sign more papers. What papers? Grandma? Withdrawal slips, she said. For the accounts she couldn't access with just the power of attorney. She said it was for my medical bills. But one time, she stopped, her brow furrowing. One time she was on the phone. She didn't think I was listening. She was talking to Dante. She was laughing. Zara. She said, Mama just signed off on the down payment for your Range Rover. Happy birthday, baby. The Range Rover. The black SUV Dante drove around town like he was a rap star. He told me he leased it with profits from his consulting firm. They bought a luxury car with my grandmother's life savings while she rotted in a bed with bed sores. That was it. The last thread of doubt, the last microscopic hope that this was all a misunderstanding evaporated. This wasn't just theft. It was torture. It was a slow, deliberate murder of a woman's spirit for the sake of appearances. I stood up. I felt taller, colder, sharper. I am going to fix this, Grandma, I said. Just then, a heavy woman in scrubs bustled into the room. She looked annoyed. Visiting hours are over, she barked without looking at me. And you need to clear out. Administrator says if the back balance isn't paid by Friday, she goes to the state ward. We ain't a charity. I turned around slowly. I looked at the woman's name tag. Nurse Betty. I walked up to her until I was inches from her face. Nurse Betty. I said, my voice low and terrifyingly calm. I am not a visitor. I am Zara Williams, Senior Forensic Auditor for the state of Georgia. And you are currently obstructing an active investigation into elder abuse, wire fraud, and kidnapping. Nurse Betty took a step back, her eyes widening. What? She stammered. I pulled out my phone and held up the photo of the power of attorney document I had found in the safe. This facility has been accepting payments from a fraudulent source for 2 years. I lied smoothly. Well, it wasn't really a lie, was it? Acceptance of stolen funds is a crime. I have already contacted the authorities. Now you have 2 choices. You can get me the administrator right now and prepare Mrs. Washington's discharge papers immediately, or you can explain to the FBI why her chart shows severe neglect while your billing department claims full service care. I didn't wait for her answer. I walked past her into the hallway and saw the frantic activity at the nurses' station. They knew. They knew the bills weren't being paid, and they knew the quality of care was illegal. They just didn't care until a woman in a tailored suit started using words like federal investigation. I went back into the room. Grandma was looking at me with awe. You sound just like your grandfather, she whispered. I smiled at her. It was the first genuine smile I had felt in hours. I am getting you out of here, I said. My phone buzzed. It was the confirmation from the private ambulance service. ETA 5 minutes. I spent those 5 minutes packing the few pathetic belongings my grandmother had. A comb, a Bible, a framed photo of me when I was 12, the glass cracked. That was it. 2 years of life reduced to a plastic grocery bag. When the paramedics arrived, they were professional and swift. They weren't the tired, overworked staff of Sunny Meadows. They were the best money could buy. They transferred her to a stretcher with gentle hands, wrapping her in a thick, warm blanket. We are taking you to Emory, I told her, walking beside the stretcher. You are going to have a private suite. You are going to have room service. You are going to have a view of the skyline. As we wheeled her out to the lobby, a man in a cheap suit came running out of an office. He was sweating. Ms. Williams, please, there is no need for this, he pleaded, trying to block our path. We can work out a payment plan. We take excellent care of Hazel. I stopped the stretcher. I looked at him. You haven't changed her sheets in 3 days? I said, pointing to the yellow stains on the linen the paramedics had just removed. You fed her cold oatmeal for dinner, and you sent a threat of eviction to a woman you knew had no phone access. I pulled a business card from my pocket and flicked it at his chest. It landed on his tie. My lawyers will be in touch to discuss the lawsuit for negligence and emotional distress. I suggest you don't shred any documents. I will find them. I walked out the double doors into the humid Atlanta night. The flashing lights of the private ambulance illuminated the parking lot. It looked like a spaceship compared to the rusted sedans of the staff. I climbed into the back with Grandma. As the doors closed, shutting out the smell of sunny meadows forever, I took her hand again. "Zara," she asked, her voice sleepy now that the adrenaline was fading. "Yes, Grandma." "Where is Bernice? Is she in trouble?" I looked down at my phone. I had a notification from my bank app. Another charge. $500 at a poolside bar in Dubai. "Bernice is on vacation," I said, stroking her hair. "She is having the time of her life." I paused, watching the city lights flicker past the ambulance window. "But do not worry, Grandma. I am planning a welcome home party she will never forget." I pulled up my email and composed a new message to my legal team. Subject: emergency guardianship and asset freeze. Body: execute immediately. Revoke existing power of attorney for Hazel Washington based on evidence of fraud and abuse. File for immediate temporary guardianship in my name. And Sarah, locate every single account linked to Dante and Bernice Williams. I want their credit cards declined before they order their next round of drinks. I hit send. The war had moved from the shadows into the light. My mother had stolen my past by erasing my father. She had stolen my present by draining my bank account. And she had tried to steal my grandmother's future. But she made one critical error. She assumed I was just a checkbook. She forgot that I am the one who balances the ledger. And her debt was about to come due. The silence of the 40th floor was a stark contrast to the chaos of the nursing home I had just left. Here in my corner office at the firm, the only sound was the low hum of the server banks and the soft click of my nails against the glass of my desk. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the Atlanta skyline burned with amber and white lights, a city that never slept, much like the rage currently keeping me upright. I had left my grandmother settled in the VIP wing of Emory Hospital, guarded by a private security detail that cost more per hour than my brother Dante had made in the last decade. She was safe. She was sleeping on Egyptian cotton sheets, finally free from the nightmare my mother had orchestrated. Now it was time for me to go to work. I sat down in my ergonomic leather chair and logged into my terminal. My team was already there, physically and digitally. Sarah, my assistant, was pulling records. Marcus, the private investigator I kept on retainer for high-stakes corporate espionage cases, was sitting on my leather sofa, a tablet in his hand, and a look of grim satisfaction on his face. "We are ready when you are," Zara, Marcus said. I cracked my knuckles. "Let us begin the autopsy." On the massive monitors in front of me, the financial life of the Williams family began to unravel in high definition. I had frozen their assets an hour ago, but before I seized everything, I needed to know exactly where the bleeding stopped. I needed to know who else was infected. We started with Dante. My brother liked to call himself an entrepreneur. He had an LLC called Dante Global Ventures. To the family and to the church congregation, it was an investment firm. To the IRS, it was a black hole. I pulled up the transaction history for the corporate account. It was fed exclusively by transfers from my mother's account, which meant it was fed by my grandmother's stolen pension and my own emergency funds. I looked at the outflows. There were the obvious ones: car payments for the Range Rover, leases on expensive office furniture for a workspace he never visited. But then there were the withdrawals that didn't make sense. Cash. Thousands of dollars in cash withdrawals, always at ATMs near upscale shopping districts or nightclubs. But there was something else. A recurring payment labeled consultant fees. It was $3,000 a month, every month, like clockwork. "Who is the consultant?" I asked Marcus. Marcus tapped his tablet. He sent a file to my screen. "It is not a consultant, Zara. It is a hush fund." I opened the file. It was a birth certificate. The child's name was Malik. He was 4 years old. The mother was a woman named Keisha Johnson, a former bottle service waitress at a club Dante used to frequent. I stared at the document. Dante had a secret child, my brother, the man who stood at the pulpit on Easter Sunday holding hands with his wife Tiffany. The man who preached about the sanctity of the family unit while judging me for being single at 35 had a 4-year-old son he was hiding from the world. He is not paying child support, I realized, looking at the transfers. He is paying her to stay quiet. I looked at the timestamps. The payments usually went out the day after he received a transfer from my mother. He was stealing from our grandmother to pay off the mother of his secret child so his wife wouldn't find out. Speaking of the wife, Marcus said, his voice dropping an octave. You are going to want to see this. He pulled up a new window on the main screen. It was the financial profile for Tiffany Miller Williams, my sister-in-law, the woman who had thrown her house keys at me, the woman who had sneered at my department store aesthetic. Tiffany did not work. She described herself as a domestic engineer and a lifestyle curator. According to her Instagram, she spent her days decorating their home, raising their 2 children, and going to the gym. I looked at her credit card statements. There was a recurring charge here too. Fit Life Elite Training, $500 a session 3 times a week. That is an expensive gym, I muttered. It is not a gym, Marcus said. He swiped on his tablet and a series of photos appeared on my screen. They were taken by one of Marcus's field operatives over the last month. The first photo showed Tiffany getting out of her white Mercedes. She was wearing yoga pants and carrying a gym bag. But she wasn't walking into a gym. She was walking into the valet entrance of the St. Regis Hotel in Buckhead. The second photo showed her in the lobby. She was greeting a man. He was young, maybe 25. He was incredibly fit, wearing a tight t-shirt that left little to the imagination. He was not Dante. The third photo showed them entering the elevator together. His hand was on the small of her back. Her head was thrown back in laughter. The fourth photo was a copy of the hotel folio. The room was registered to Tiffany Williams. The charges were for champagne room service and spa treatments. She is paying for him, Marcus said. The guy is a personal trainer technically, but she is his only client. She is paying his rent. She is buying him clothes. See this charge here, luxury automotive leasing. She is co-signing a lease for a Dodge Charger for him. I felt a wave of nausea that had nothing to do with the late hour. This was the truth of my family. Dante was stealing from us to hide a child because he was terrified of Tiffany leaving him and taking half of his imaginary empire. Tiffany was stealing from Dante, who was stealing from us to pay for a boy toy because she despised her husband. They were 2 parasites feeding off the same dying host, and neither of them realized the host was already a corpse. They are perfect for each other, I whispered. They are both frauds. I looked at the chat logs Marcus had intercepted. Tiffany's texts to her lover were explicit and cruel. She mocked Dante. She called him a loser. She bragged about how easy it was to manipulate him into buying her things. She complained about having to go on this family trip to Dubai because she would miss her real man. And then I saw a text that made my blood run cold. It was from last week. Tiffany. The ugly sister finally paid up. We got the cash for the upgrades. Lover nice. When do I get my allowance, Tiffany? As soon as we land. I will transfer it from the joint account. Dante is too stupid to check the statements. I sat back in my chair. The room felt freezing. They weren't just greedy, they were venomous. They hated me. They truly, deeply hated me. They saw me as nothing more than a resource to be exploited, a faceless ATM that dispensed cash on demand. I looked at the clock. It was nearly midnight in Atlanta. That meant it was morning in Dubai. Their flight would be landing in a few hours. They were probably waking up in their private suites right now. They were probably drinking fresh squeezed orange juice and looking out the window at the clouds, thinking they had gotten away with the perfect crime. They thought they were landing in paradise. Sarah. I said, my voice cutting through the silence of the office. Yes, Zara. I want everything packaged. I want the birth certificate for Dante's son. I want the hotel receipts for Tiffany's affair. I want the photos. I want the chat logs. I want the bank statements showing the flow of funds from Grandma's pension to Dante's LLC to the mistress and the lover. I stood up and walked to the window looking down at the city. I want digital dossiers prepared, one for Dante, one for Tiffany, and one for the pastor of their church. The pastor, Sarah asked, surprised. Yes, I said. My mother cares about her image in the church more than she cares about her own soul. We are going to burn that image to the ground. And Sarah, yes. Check the status of the foreclosure. I already did, Sarah said. I bought the note from the bank an hour ago. You are officially the owner of the mortgage on the Buckhead estate. Good, I said. I turned back to the screens. The faces of my brother and sister-in-law smiled back at me from their social media profiles. They looked so happy, so secure. They had built a house of cards on a foundation of lies, and they had used my money to buy the glue. But they forgot that I am the wind. I picked up my phone. I had a notification from Dante. A photo sent from the plane. It was a selfie of him and Tiffany clinking crystal glasses filled with amber liquid. Caption, living the dream. Haters gonna hate. Blessed. I did not reply. I simply forwarded the photo to my legal team with a note. Exhibit B. Dissipation of assets during commission of a felony. I sat back down. The exhaustion was there hovering at the edges of my consciousness, but the adrenaline of the hunt kept it at bay. I had the evidence. I had the motive. I had the weapon. Now I just had to wait for them to walk into the kill zone. I looked at the picture of Tiffany again. She was wearing a diamond necklace I had never seen before. I checked the credit card statement again. Van Cleef and Arpels. Atlanta International Terminal. Purchase time 2 hours ago. $25,000. That necklace was mine. Legally, financially, morally. I am going to take that necklace back, I said to the empty room. And I am going to take it back while she is wearing it. I closed the files on the screen. The financial profile was complete. The black hole was mapped. Dante and Tiffany were not just broke. They were morally bankrupt criminals who were about to land in a country with very strict laws only to find out their return tickets had been canceled and their credit cards were dead. But I wasn't going to strand them in Dubai. No, that would be too kind. I wanted them here. I wanted to see their faces when the house of cards fell. I booked a venue for their welcome home party. I ordered the catering. I sent out the invitations to the extended family and the church elders. And then I finally allowed myself to close my eyes for a moment. The girl who had been left at the curb was gone. The woman who opened her eyes was the CEO of her own destiny. And she was about to conduct the most hostile takeover in family history. The week leading up to my family's return from Dubai was the most productive week of my professional life. I did not sleep much. Sleep felt like a waste of time when I had an empire to dismantle and a prison cell to prepare. I operated on espresso and the cold, hard adrenaline of absolute vengeance. My office became a war room. My team of forensic analysts and private investigators worked in shifts compiling a mountain of evidence that was so dense it could have crushed Dante physically if I dropped it on him. But evidence alone was not enough. I needed leverage. I needed total control. And control in America usually comes down to one thing: real estate. I sat in a glass-walled conference room on the 32nd floor of the First National Bank Tower in downtown Atlanta. Across from me sat Mr. Henderson, a senior vice president of risk management. He looked nervous. Bankers usually do when a forensic accountant asks for a meeting, even if they are not the target. Miss Williams. Mr. Henderson said, adjusting his silk tie. We have reviewed the documents you sent over regarding the property on Peachtree Battle Avenue. The situation is indeed irregular. It is not irregular, Mr. Henderson, I said, my voice smooth and professional. It is fraud. My brother forged my signature to secure a third mortgage on a property that is jointly owned. He used a fake notary. He submitted falsified income statements. By all rights, this loan is toxic. If the regulators see this during your next audit, you are going to be facing fines that will make your quarterly bonus disappear. Henderson paled. We are aware of the exposure. What are you proposing? I slid a cashier's check across the mahogany table. I am proposing a solution. I want to buy the note. He looked at the check. He looked at me. You want to purchase the mortgage debt? I want to purchase the non-performing asset. I corrected him. I want to become the holder of the note. I want the bank to assign the deed of trust to me. Today. He picked up the check. It was for the full balance of the loan, plus a small premium for their trouble. It was a significant amount of my savings, but it was an investment in my freedom. If I hold the note, I continued, the bank is clear. You have your money. You have no liability for the fraud because you have been made whole, and I get to handle the foreclosure process internally. Henderson did not hesitate. He called legal. Within an hour, the papers were drawn up. I signed my name with a flourish. As the ink dried, the reality settled in. I was no longer just the daughter or the sister. I was the bank. I owned the roof over my mother's head. I owned the walls Dante hung his fake degrees on. They were living in my house, sleeping in my bedrooms, and they did not even know they were trespassing. I walked out of the bank with the deed assignment in my briefcase. Step 1 was complete. Step 2 required a different kind of authority. I drove to the federal building. I had an appointment with Special Agent Miller of the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. We had worked together before on cases involving corporate embezzlement. He knew my work. He knew I did not waste time with hunches. I laid out the dossier on his metal desk. It was 3 inches thick. Identity theft, wire fraud, bank fraud, tax evasion, and elder abuse involving the crossing of state lines for financial gain. Miller whistled low as he flipped through the pages. This is your brother, he asked, looking at the mugshot I had pulled from a previous DUI arrest Dante had hidden from the family. That is the suspect, I said. I have no brother. Miller looked at the bank statements showing the transfers from my grandmother's pension fund into Dante's shell company. He looked at the credit card receipts from Dubai. He is traveling internationally on stolen funds, Miller noted. He returns on Sunday, I said. Emirates Flight 202. Do you want us to pick him up at customs? Miller asked. I shook my head. No. If you arrest him at the airport, he will claim it is a misunderstanding. He will make a scene. He will play the victim. I want you to come to the house. The house I am hosting a welcome home party, I said, my eyes locking with his. All the evidence is there. The computers, the files, and the accomplices. I want you to arrest him in front of his audience. Miller leaned back. He tapped his pen on the desk. We usually do not do theater, Zara. But you do like a slam-dunk conviction with all the evidence boxed up and ready to go, don't you? He smiled a thin, tight smile. Sunday night, he said. We will have a team nearby. Step 2 was complete. The hammer was poised to fall. Now for step 3. The social execution. My mother Bernice did not worship God. She worshipped status. Her pew at the Greater Ebenezer Baptist Church was her throne. She spent more time curating her image as the blessed matriarch than she did reading the Bible. If I took her money, she would be angry. If I took her reputation, she would be destroyed. I pulled my car into the church parking lot. It was a massive complex, a megachurch that catered to Atlanta's black elite. I walked into the administrative offices and asked to see Pastor Jenkins. The pastor was a man who appreciated the finer things in life, much like my mother. He greeted me with a warm, practiced smile, thinking perhaps I was there to make a donation. Sister Zara. What a pleasant surprise, he boomed. We have missed you at service. Your mother tells us you have been working so hard. She tells you a lot of things, I said, taking a seat in his plush office. She does. He nodded. She called me from Dubai just yesterday. She said the Lord has truly blessed Dante's business. She said she is planning a special testimony when she returns. I bet she is, I said. Actually, Pastor, that is why I am here. I want to host a special reception for them this Sunday evening at the house. A welcome back celebration. I want to invite the church elders, the deacon board, and the ladies of the auxiliary committee." His eyes lit up. A gathering of the influence. He loved that. "That sounds wonderful, Zara. A celebration of family prosperity." "Exactly," I said. "And I want you to be there to lead the prayer. I want everyone to see exactly where the blessings came from." I handed him a heavy cream-colored envelope. It was an invitation I had printed that morning. It was elegant, expensive, and completely misleading. "We will announce the expansion of the Williams family legacy," I said. He took the bait hook, line, and sinker. "I will be there, Zara, and I will make sure the board knows. This is a testimony we all need to hear." I left the church with a sense of dark accomplishment. My mother wanted an audience. I was going to give her one. I was going to fill her living room with the very people she tried so desperately to impress. And then I was going to show them exactly who she really was. I spent the rest of the week preparing the stage. I hired a catering company, but not just any catering company. I hired the one my mother always said was too expensive, the one she coveted. I ordered the best champagne. I ordered floral arrangements that were obscene in their size and cost. I paid for it all with my own money. This was an investment. I wanted the house to look like the palace she pretended it was. I wanted the contrast between the luxury of the party and the reality of the eviction to be as sharp as a razor blade. On Friday, I went back to the house. It was quiet. The air was stale. I walked through the rooms, tagging items with small, discreet, color-coded stickers. Red stickers for items bought with stolen funds. Blue stickers for items that were technically mine. Yellow stickers for items that belonged to the estate of my father. There were red stickers everywhere. The new flat-screen TV. The designer furniture in the living room. The art on the walls. It was all fruit of the poisonous tree. I went into Tiffany's room. It was a pigsty of expensive clutter. I found her jewelry box. I opened it. There was the diamond necklace she had bought at the airport. I took it out. It felt heavy in my hand, heavy with the weight of my hard work and her theft. I did not steal it back. Not yet. That would be petty. I put it back. I wanted her to wear it on Sunday. I wanted the police to take it off her neck as evidence. I walked into the guest room where my grandmother used to stay before they shipped her off to the nursing home. It was now a storage room for Dante's sneaker collection. Boxes of Jordans stacked to the ceiling. I pushed a stack of boxes over. Behind them, tucked into the corner, was an old rocking chair. It was the chair Grandma used to sit in to read her Bible. I sat in the chair. I rocked back and forth. The wood creaked. For years, I had thought I was the failure of this family. I thought I was the one who didn't measure up because I didn't have the flash, the style, the loud charisma of Dante and my mother. I thought my quiet, steady job was boring. But sitting there in the silence, I realized the truth. I was the foundation. I was the only thing holding this house of cards up. They stood on my shoulders to look tall, and then they kicked me in the face. I pulled out my phone. I had one more call to make. I dialed the number for the finest security firm in Atlanta. "I need a team for Sunday night," I told the dispatcher. 4 guards, armed. "What is the threat level?" the dispatcher asked. "The threat level is high," I said. "I am evicting squatters, and they are going to be very, very angry." Saturday passed in a blur of logistics. I coordinated with the FBI agent. I coordinated with the bank's legal team. I coordinated with the private investigators who were bringing the final piece of the puzzle to the party. I went to the hospital to see Grandma Hazel. She was sitting up in bed, eating fresh fruit, watching a soap opera. Her color was coming back. She looked like herself again. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" she asked me, taking my hand. "I am ready," I said. "Are you scared?" I thought about it. Was I scared? I was about to destroy my own family. I was about to send my brother to prison and my mother to the streets. It was unnatural. It went against every instinct of biology and upbringing. "No," I said. "I am not scared. I am efficient." Grandma squeezed my hand. "Your father would be proud of you, Zara. He hated a thief, and he hated a liar." Sunday morning dawned bright and hot. the humidity hung over Atlanta like a wet blanket. I dressed carefully. I chose a white suit, sharp, clean, clinical. I pulled my hair back into a tight bun. I put on my glasses. I looked in the mirror. I did not look like a sister. I did not look like a daughter. I looked like the person who comes to collect the debt. I drove to the house early. The caterers were setting up. The florists were bringing in the lilies. The house smelled of money. I set up the projector in the living room. I connected my laptop. I tested the connection. The presentation was ready. It was titled simply, The Williams Family Audit. At 5 p.m., the guests began to arrive. The church ladies in their Sunday hats. The deacons in their suits. They oohed and awed at the food. They complimented the flowers. "Where is Sister Bernice?" they asked. "She is on her way from the airport," I said, smiling my best hostess smile. "She wants to make a grand entrance." And she would. At 6 p.m., a limousine pulled into the driveway. I had sent it to pick them up. I wanted them to feel like stars right until the end. The door opened. Bernice stepped out. She was wearing a gold dress that was too tight and too bright. She was beaming. Dante followed wearing sunglasses even though it was evening. Tiffany brought up the rear looking bored, tapping on her phone. They walked up the front steps. The guests inside cheered. "Welcome home," everyone shouted. My mother stopped in the doorway, soaking it in. She blew kisses. She waved. She looked like she had won the lottery. She spotted me standing by the fireplace. She walked over to me, her eyes gleaming with triumph. "See," she whispered, leaning in to hug me so the guests wouldn't hear her venom. "I told you we would be fine. Look at this party. You finally did something right." I hugged her back. I felt her stiffen when I whispered in her ear. "I didn't do it right, Mom. I did it perfectly." I pulled away and tapped the microphone I was holding. "Attention. Everyone," I said, my voice amplifying through the room. "Please gather round. My mother has a testimony to share. But first, I have a little presentation to welcome our travelers back to reality." Dante grabbed a glass of champagne. He winked at me. He thought I was playing along. He thought I had accepted my place. I hit the spacebar on my laptop. The lights dimmed. The projector hummed to life, and the first slide appeared on the wall behind me. It was not a picture of the Burj Khalifa. It was a picture of the Emirates first-class boarding pass with Dante's name on it. And underneath in bold red letters was the caption, "Paid for by Zara Williams. Stolen credit card, ending in 4598. The room went silent, and I smiled. "Welcome home," I said. "Let the audit begin." The phone rang at 2 in the afternoon on Sunday. I was sitting in my office reviewing the final foreclosure documents one last time, when my mother's name flashed on the screen. I let it ring twice. I took a sip of my sparkling water. Then I answered, putting on the voice of the dutiful, downtrodden daughter they expected to hear. "Hello," I asked. "Zara pickup. We are at curbside, Terminal F. Hurry up. It is hot out here." That was it. No hello, no how are you, no apology for the weeks of silence, just a command. My mother sounded annoyed, as if my delay in teleporting to the airport the second their wheels touched the tarmac was a personal insult to Her Majesty. "I am on my way," I said. "Do not bring that little Honda of yours." Dante's voice barked from the background. "We have a lot of bags. We need space. If you cannot fit us, rent a van. And hurry up. My skin is getting dry in this humidity." The line went dead. I looked at the phone and smiled. It was a cold, sharp smile that didn't reach my eyes. They wanted space. I would give them space. I walked down to the executive parking garage of my building. I walked past the sensible sedan they thought I drove. I stopped in front of the vehicle I had purchased yesterday. It was my gift to myself. A reward for the hard work of destroying my own lineage. It was a Mercedes G-Wagon. Matte black, black rims, tinted windows. It looked like a tank designed by a fashion designer. It cost more than Dante had legally earned in his entire life. I climbed into the driver's seat. The smell of fresh leather filled my lungs. I started the engine. It roared like a waking beast. I drove to the airport. I pulled up to the International Terminal arrivals curb. I saw them immediately. They were impossible to miss. They looked like a traveling circus of new money. Bernice was wearing a wide-brimmed hat and oversized sunglasses, looking like she was dodging paparazzi that did not exist. Dante was wearing a tracksuit that was so covered in logos, he looked like a walking billboard. Tiffany was standing next to a mountain of luggage, fanning herself with a passport. The luggage was impressive. 6 massive hardshell suitcases, all Hermes, all orange, all brand new. I did the mental math. 6 bags at roughly $10,000 a pop. That was $60,000 of luggage sitting on the dirty concrete, paid for by the credit card they stole from my safe. I rolled down the window. "Get in," I said. They froze. Dante lowered his sunglasses. Tiffany stopped fanning herself. My mother's jaw actually dropped. They stared at the car. They stared at me. "Whose car is this?" Dante asked, walking up to the door and running his hand along the matte finish. "Did you rent this? Did you steal it?" I unlocked the doors. "It is mine," I said simply. "Get in. You said you needed space." Dante let out a low whistle. He looked at the car with a mixture of lust and jealousy. "Damn, Zara. Who are you sleeping with? You cannot afford this on a tax filer's salary." I ignored him. "Pop the trunk," I said. They loaded the bags. It was a tight squeeze. The Hermes leather groaned as Dante shoved them in with zero regard for the craftsmanship. I watched them in the rearview mirror as they climbed into the back. They did not thank me. They did not ask how I had acquired a $200,000 vehicle. They immediately made it about them. "This legroom is decent," Dante said, stretching out. "But it is not as good as the Emirates suite. Man, that shower on the plane was everything." "Tell me about it, Tiffany." Sighed, checking her makeup in the visor mirror. "I feel so gross now. Being back in Atlanta feels so pedestrian. The air here is just heavy. In Dubai, everything smells like oud and money." My mother leaned forward from the back seat. She tapped my shoulder. "Zara, why is the air conditioning not higher? I am roasting. And try not to hit any bumps. My head is killing me." The champagne service was non-stop. I turned the AC up. I merged onto the highway. So I asked, my eyes fixed on the road, "How was the trip?" "Oh, you cannot imagine," Bernice said, her voice dripping with condescension. "It was spiritual, Zara. Truly spiritual. The gold souks, the Burj Al Arab. We had tea on the 99th floor. I felt so close to God. I prayed for you, baby. I really did. I prayed you would find a husband so you could experience this kind of luxury one day." I gripped the steering wheel. "That is nice of you, Mom," I said. Tiffany chimed in. "And the food. Oh my God. Zara, you would have hated it. It was all very sophisticated. Truffles on everything, gold leaf on the cappuccinos. We ate caviar for breakfast, lunch, and dinner." She leaned forward, her face appearing between the front seats. "Do you know what caviar is, Zara?" "It is fish eggs, but the expensive kind. Not like that bait you use when you go fishing with your little friends. This is beluga. It costs more per ounce than your rent." I glanced at her in the mirror. "I know what caviar is." "Tiffany," I said. She laughed, a high tinkling sound that grated on my nerves. "Right. Sure you do. Anyway, it is an acquired taste. You have to be born with a certain refinement to appreciate the salinity. It is not for everyone, especially not for people who shop with coupons." Dante snorted. "Leave her alone, Tiff." She held down the fort. She watered the plants. She is a good little worker bee. They laughed, all 3 of them. They sat in my car, surrounded by luggage bought with my money, wearing clothes bought with my money, talking about food bought with my money, and they mocked me for being poor. I said nothing. I let them laugh. I let them fill the silence with their arrogance. I was recording every word on the dash cam. We pulled up to the house in Buckhead. The lawn was freshly cut. The hedges were trimmed. I had made sure the landscaping crew came yesterday. I wanted the house to look perfect. I wanted it to look like the prize they thought they had won. See, Bernice said as we pulled into the driveway. Home sweet home, it looks good. Good job, Zara. At least you kept the grass green. We unloaded the Hermes bags. They left them in the foyer expecting me to carry them upstairs. I did not. I stood by the door, keys in hand. Well, Dante said, clapping his hands together. That was a long flight. I am going to take a nap. Wake me up when dinner is ready. Hold on, I said. They stopped. They looked at me as if the furniture had suddenly started speaking. What Tiffany asked, annoyed. Did you bring me anything? I asked. I needed to see it. I needed to see the extent of their disdain. Bernice blinked. Oh, right. The souvenir. She looked at Dante. Give it to her. Dante rolled his eyes. He reached into his carry-on bag. He pulled out a crumpled plastic bag. He tossed it at me. I caught it. Inside was a white t-shirt. It was thin see-through cotton. On the front, in bright, peeling red letters, it said, I love Dubai. I looked at the tag. Made in China. I looked at the price sticker still attached to the collar. 5 dirhams. That is about $1.30. I held up the shirt. Thanks, I said. Do not mention it, Dante said. It is authentic. You cannot get those here. It is high fashion in the street markets. We thought of you immediately. Tiffany smirked. Yeah. It is oversized. We figured you would want something to sleep in since you do not have anyone to dress up for. I folded the shirt slowly. I placed it on the entry table next to a stack of mail I had collected for them. The stack included the foreclosure notice from the bank which I had buried at the bottom of the pile. It is beautiful, I said. I will cherish it. My mother yawned. Okay, well, family time is over. We are exhausted. You can go now, Zara. Thanks for the ride. We will call you if we need groceries. Wait, I said. They groaned. What now? Bernice snapped. I just wanted to invite you to something, I said. They looked at me with suspicion. Invite us where Tiffany asked. Sizzler. We just ate Michelin star Zara. Our stomachs cannot handle the buffet. No, I said. Here, tomorrow night. Here, Dante asked. Why I wanted to throw you a welcome home party, I said. I know you are tired today, but tomorrow you will be rested. I wanted to hear all about the trip. I wanted to see the photos. Bernice's eyes lit up. An audience. She loved an audience. Who is coming? She asked. I invited Pastor Jenkins, I said, and the deacon board, and Mrs. Higgins from the auxiliary committee, and your friends from the bridge club. Bernice gasped. She smoothed her hair. Pastor Jenkins. He is coming here. Yes, I said. I told him about Dante's success. I told him about the trip. He wants to hear your testimony. He wants to bless the house. Dante puffed out his chest. The pastor wants to hear about my business. He is very interested in your financial growth, I said. He thinks you are a pillar of the community. Tiffany smiled. She touched the diamond necklace at her throat. Well, she said, I suppose we can host. It will be a good chance to show off the new jewelry. I hope you ordered decent food, Zara. None of those little sandwiches with the crusts cut off. I ordered the best, I said. Catering by the Ritz, champagne, the works. Bernice clapped her hands. Oh, Zara, finally. You are finally learning how to be a proper daughter. A welcome home party with the pastor. That is exactly what we deserve. God is good. She rushed over and hugged me. It was the first time she had touched me since she left me at the airport. She smelled of expensive lotion and deceit. Thank you, baby, she whispered. You finally did something right. I stood stiff in her arms. You are welcome, Mom, I said. Dante picked up one of the Hermes bags. All right, party tomorrow. Be here at 5 to set up. Do not be late. And wear something nice, Zara. Not that gray suit you always wear. Try to look like you belong to this family for once." They turned and walked up the grand staircase. I watched them go. I watched the orange bags bobbing up the steps. I watched Tiffany's hand resting on the banister I now owned. I watched Dante strutting like a king in a castle that had already been conquered. I waited until I heard the bedroom doors close. Then I walked over to the entry table. I picked up the cheap t-shirt. "I love Dubai." I wiped my boots with it. I dropped it on the floor. I walked out of the house and got back into my G-Wagon. I sat in the driveway for a moment, looking up at the house. The lights were coming on in the master bedroom. They were probably unpacking their loot. They were probably laughing about how easy it was to get rid of me. They had no idea that the pastor wasn't coming to bless them. He was coming to witness their execution. I put the car in reverse. "Enjoy the caviar tonight, Tiffany," I whispered, "because tomorrow you are going to eat crow." I drove away into the twilight. The trap was set. The bait was taken. The rats were in the cage. All that was left to do was close the door. The living room of the Buckhead estate had been transformed into a theater of opulence. I stood in the back corner near the heavy velvet drapes blending into the shadows in my stark white suit. From my vantage point, I could survey the entire room. It looked like a page torn from a high society magazine, which was exactly what my mother had always wanted. I had hired the best lighting designers in Atlanta to bathe the space in a soft golden glow that smoothed over wrinkles and made cheap jewelry sparkle like the real thing. But tonight, the jewelry was real. It was just stolen. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume roast duck and unbridled arrogance. Waiters in white gloves moved silently through the crowd, offering trays of hors d'oeuvres that cost more per bite than most people earned in an hour. I watched a deacon from the church pop a truffle arancini into his mouth and close his eyes in ecstasy. He had no idea he was eating evidence. In the center of the room, my mother Bernice was holding court. She looked radiant. The stress of her financial ruin was gone, plastered over with layers of professional makeup and the high of perceived victory. She wore the gold dress she had arrived in yesterday, but now she had accessorized it with a ruby brooch I recognized from the credit card statement. A $5,000 impulse buy at the Dubai airport. She was surrounded by the ladies of the auxiliary committee women who had spent years judging her for her struggles and who were now looking at her with naked envy. Bernice basked in it. She threw her head back and laughed a sound that was practiced and loud. "Oh, you simply must go," she was saying, her voice carrying over the string quartet I had hired. The spiritual awakening I experienced in the desert was profound, truly profound. When I stood on the balcony of our suite looking out over the Persian Gulf, I felt the Lord speak to me. He told me that this was my season. He told me that my faith had unlocked the windows of heaven. I took a sip of my sparkling water. The Lord had nothing to do with it. My credit score did. Nearby, Dante was putting on a performance of his own. He was standing by the marble fireplace, one arm resting on the mantel, the other holding a glass of scotch that was older than he was. He was surrounded by the men of the church, including Pastor Jenkins. Dante was wearing a new suit, a bespoke Italian cut that fit him perfectly. He looked like the success story he pretended to be. "The market is volatile," Dante was saying, swirling his drink. "You have to know when to pivot. That is the secret. Most people get scared. They pull back. But my firm, we lean in. We saw the opportunity in international logistics before anyone else. That is what this trip was about, expanding our footprint in the Middle East." I almost choked on my water. International logistics. My brother could not even mail a package without losing the tracking number. But the men were nodding. They were captivated. They saw the suit. They saw the house. They saw the champagne. They wanted to believe that one of their own had cracked the code to unlimited wealth. Pastor Jenkins clapped Dante on the shoulder. "It is a blessing to see a young man stewarding his talents so well," the pastor boomed. "The church is proud of you, son, and we know you will remember where your blessings come from when the collection plate comes around." Dante grinned, a shark-like expression. "Absolutely, Pastor. A tithe is the first check I write." I checked my watch. It was almost time. On the plush velvet chaise lounge near the window, Tiffany was playing the role of the demure, supportive wife. She was holding court with the younger wives and daughters. She stroked the diamond necklace at her throat constantly, a nervous tick that drew the eye straight to the $25,000 price tag. Dubai is exhausting, honestly. Tiffany sighed, looking bored. The shopping is intense. Dante insisted we go to every boutique. He just loves spoiling me. I told him, baby, I do not need another bag. But he said, Tiffany, you represent the brand. You have to look the part. She giggled. It was a sound that grated on my nerves like sandpaper. So I let him buy it. What can I do? He is just so generous. I looked at the laptop connected to the projector on the table next to me. The little green light was blinking. The presentation was loaded. The file name was simply The Truth. I watched them for a few more minutes. I wanted to burn this image into my memory. I wanted to remember exactly how they looked when they thought they were untouchable. I wanted to remember the smugness on Dante's face, the vanity on Tiffany's, the delusion on my mother's. They were feasting on the carcass of my life and they were licking their fingers. My mother caught my eye from across the room. She waved me over. I walked toward her, the dutiful daughter answering the summons. The circle of women parted to let me in. And here she is, my mother announced, wrapping a heavy arm around my shoulders. My Zara, the rock of this family. While we were out expanding the family empire, she stayed here and kept the home fires burning. She is not much for travel, are you, baby? You like your little routine here. She squeezed my shoulder. It was a warning squeeze. Play along. I smiled. It was tight and thin. I prefer to stay grounded, Mom, I said. Someone has to keep track of the details. Exactly, Bernice said, beaming at her friends. She has a gift for administration. Not everyone can be a visionary like Dante. We need people to file the papers, right? The women laughed politely. They looked at me with pity. The plain sister, the worker bee, the one who did not get to go to Dubai. Pastor Jenkins tapped his glass with a spoon. The sharp ring cut through the chatter. The room fell silent. The string quartet stopped playing. Brothers and sisters, the pastor said, his voice booming without a microphone. Let us gather. Sister Bernice has asked to share a testimony of God's favor before we partake in this magnificent feast. The guests shuffled forward, forming a semicircle around my family. Bernice, Dante, and Tiffany stood in the center, bathed in the golden light of the chandelier. They looked like a royal family posing for a portrait. Bernice stepped forward. She clasped her hands together. She looked up at the ceiling, tears shimmering in her eyes. She was a magnificent actress. I just want to thank the Lord, she began, her voice trembling with emotion. For years I prayed for a breakthrough. I prayed for my children. I prayed for restoration. And look around you. Look at what He has done. He has taken my son Dante and raised him up to be a king in the marketplace. He has restored our fortunes tenfold. This trip was a sign. A sign that the Williams family is destined for greatness. Amens rippled through the crowd. Dante stepped up beside her. He put his arm around her. Mama is right, he said, his voice smooth. We worked hard for this. We took risks. And now we want to share our success with you. We want this house to be a beacon of hope. Tiffany joined them, linking her arm through Dante's. She smiled her perfect white smile. We are just so blessed, she said. The applause started. It was warm and enthusiastic. These people wanted to believe. They wanted to believe that miracles happened, that fortunes could turn overnight, that the son of a single mother could become a tycoon. I stepped away from the wall. My heels clicked sharply on the hardwood floor. The sound was different from the applause. It was rhythmic, deliberate. I walked to the center of the room, stopping just outside their circle of light. I held a wireless microphone in my hand. Excuse me, I said. The applause died down. Bernice looked at me, a flash of annoyance crossing her face before she smoothed it back into a welcoming smile. Zara, she said, Did you want to add something I did? I said. I stepped fully into the light. I did not look at the guests. I looked at my family. Before we raise a glass, I said, my voice calm and professional, the same voice I used when testifying in federal court. I think it is important that we acknowledge the true source of this abundance. My mother talked about a breakthrough. Dante talked about hard work. But I think pictures speak louder than words. Bernice frowned. What are you doing, Zara? I prepared a special presentation, I said, gesturing to the screen that had descended from the ceiling on the far wall. A tribute to the origins of the Williams family fortune. I think the pastor and the deacon board would be very interested to see exactly how this miracle was achieved. Dante laughed nervously. Zara, we do not need a slideshow. Let us just eat. No, I insisted. You traveled so far. You experienced so much. It would be a sin not to share the details, the receipts, if you will. I looked at the pastor. Do not, you agree, Pastor? Should we not celebrate the specific details of this blessing? Pastor Jenkins nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely, Sister Zara. Let us see the testimony. I looked at Tiffany. She was frowning, her hand going to her necklace again. She sensed it. She sensed the shift in the air. The predator in her recognized the predator in me. But it was too late. I walked over to the laptop. My family stood frozen in the center of the room, smiles plastered on their faces, waiting for photos of camels and skyscrapers. They were waiting for their vanity to be stroked. I looked at my mother one last time. She gave me a tiny nod, thinking I was finally playing my part, finally serving her glory. I hit the enter key. The projector hummed. A beam of white light cut through the room, hitting the screen. The first image appeared. It was not a photo of Dubai. It was a high-resolution scan of a bank statement. The font was large. The numbers were red. At the top it read, "The Bernice Williams Trust." And below that, a single line item highlighted in yellow. Unauthorized transfer to Dante Global Ventures $50,000. And below that, another document appeared on the split screen. It was a letter from the Sunny Meadows nursing home. Subject: eviction notice for Hazel Washington due to non-payment. The room went deadly silent. I spoke into the microphone. This is the first miracle, I said. How to turn a grandmother's life savings into a startup capital for a fake company while leaving her to rot in a state facility. I saw my mother's knees buckle. I saw Dante's jaw drop. But I was just getting started. I clicked the next slide. The show had begun. The silence in the room was heavy and suffocating, like a wool blanket soaked in water. My mother was clutching the back of a velvet armchair, her face a mask of ashen terror, as the image of my grandmother's eviction notice burned on the screen behind me. The guests, the church elders, the ladies of the auxiliary board, who had been cooing over the floral arrangements just minutes ago, were now frozen, their champagne flutes halfway to their mouths. They looked from the screen to my mother and back again, the gears of judgment turning rapidly in their minds. But I was not done, not even close. I had peeled back the first layer of the onion, the rot at the core of my mother's soul, but now it was time to expose the parasites she had nurtured. I tapped the laptop key again. The image on the screen dissolved and was replaced by a spreadsheet. It was stark, high contrast, and brutal in its clarity. It was a forensic breakdown of my own credit card statement from the platinum card I had entrusted to my mother for emergencies. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice cutting through the hush, we have established how the seed money for this family's sudden wealth was acquired, by stealing from a defenseless elderly woman. But you might be wondering how they afforded the lifestyle, how they afforded the flights, the clothes, the champagne you are drinking right now. I pointed the laser pointer at the screen. The red dot danced over a line item dated 3 weeks ago, Emirates Airlines, $80,000, and below that, the Ritz-Carlton Dubai, $40,000, and below that, the entry that made Tiffany flinch so hard she knocked her clutch to the floor. Van Cleef and Arpels, $25,000. This is my credit card statement, I said. A card that was stolen from a locked safe in this house. A card that was maxed out to its limit to fund the illusion standing before you. I looked directly at Dante. He was sweating now, beads of perspiration breaking out on his forehead despite the aggressive air conditioning. He opened his mouth to speak, to spin some lie about how he was going to pay me back, but I cut him off. You told me at the airport that I could not come because we were broke, Dante. You told me my ticket was declined, but the truth is, you needed me to stay behind so you could use my credit to live like a king. You committed wire fraud. You committed identity theft. And you did it all while mocking me for working a 9-to-5 job. The crowd murmured. The pastor looked down at his shoes, shaking his head. He had just praised Dante for his stewardship. Now he was looking at a thief. But theft is boring, isn't it? I asked, stepping closer to the guests. It is just numbers. It is impersonal. Let us talk about where the rest of the money went. Because Dante wasn't the only one spending. I clicked the remote. The screen changed again. This time it was not a spreadsheet. It was a photograph. It was high resolution, taken with a telephoto lens by one of Marcus's best operatives. It showed the entrance of the St. Regis Hotel in Buckhead. It showed a white Mercedes pulling up to the valet. And it showed Tiffany stepping out. She was wearing yoga pants and a tight tank top. She looked fit. She looked happy. Tiffany let out a small, strangled squeak. This photo was taken last Tuesday, I said, at 2 in the afternoon. At the exact same time, Dante was supposedly meeting with investors for his logistics firm. I clicked again. The next photo showed the lobby. Tiffany was greeting a man. He was tall, muscular, and very young. He was wearing a gym t-shirt that was 2 sizes too small. His hand was resting intimately on her lower back. And the next photo. They were in the elevator. They were kissing. It was not a friendly peck. It was passionate. It was hungry. The room gasped. A collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen right out of the space. This is Chad, I said helpfully. He is a personal trainer at FitLife Gym. Tiffany has been paying for his sessions 3 times a week. $500 a session. But as you can see from the hotel folio, I am about to project the training did not happen in a gym. I clicked again. A hotel receipt appeared. Room service for 2. Champagne. Oysters. Massage services. Tiffany stood up. Her face was a mottled mix of red and white. "Turn it off!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "Turn it off, right now." "You are lying. That is photoshopped." "Is it?" I asked calmly. "Then explain this bank transfer from Dante's business account to a car dealership for the lease on a Dodge Charger registered to Chad Stevens." I clicked again. The lease agreement appeared. Tiffany's signature was on the cosigner line. Dante turned to his wife. His face was a mask of utter confusion that was slowly hardening into rage. He looked at the screen. He looked at Tiffany. He looked at the diamond necklace around her neck. The necklace bought with my money, worn by a woman who was spending his stolen loot on another man. "You bought him a car," Dante whispered. The sound carried in the silent room. "You told me you were at Bible study." Tiffany scrambled backward, knocking over a vase of white lilies. The water splashed across the hardwood floor. "He neglects me," she shrieked, pointing a manicured finger at Dante. "He is never home. He is always playing the big businessman, but he is a fraud. At least Chad pays attention to me. So you stole from me to pay a man to pay attention to you," Dante roared. He took a step toward her. The carefully curated image of the power couple was disintegrating in real time. But I wasn't done with Dante yet. "Hold on, Dante," I said, my voice sharp as a whip. "Before you get too self-righteous about the sanctity of marriage, we have one more slide." Dante froze. He looked at me with wild eyes. He knew. He knew what was coming. "Don't, Zara," he begged. "Please, not this. You should have thought about that before you forged my signature on a mortgage application," I said. I hit the button. The screen filled with a birth certificate. It was a standard Georgia state document. Name of child Malik Johnson. Date of birth 4 years ago. Name of mother Keisha Johnson. Name of father Dante Williams. Tiffany stopped screaming. She stared at the screen. Her mouth hung open. And next to the birth certificate, a bank statement appeared. It showed monthly transfers of $3,000 labeled consultant fees going to an account owned by Keisha Johnson. This is Malik, I said. He is 4 years old. He is your nephew Zara. Or wait, he is my nephew. He is your son Dante. A son you have hidden from your wife, your mother and your church for 4 years. You have been stealing from grandma's pension not to invest in logistics but to pay hush money to the mother of your secret child. The room erupted. It was total chaos. The church ladies were fanning themselves. The deacons were whispering furiously. Pastor Jenkins looked like he was about to have a stroke. Tiffany looked at Dante. The shock on her face was replaced by a feral animalistic fury. "You have a kid!" she screamed. "You have a kid with that stripper! You told me you didn't know her. You swore on your mother's life. I didn't want to hurt you," Dante yelled back. His hands held up in surrender. "I was handling it! Handling it! You were handling it with my money!" Tiffany lunged. It happened in slow motion. Tiffany, the woman who prided herself on her elegance, on her high society manners, launched herself at my brother like a missile. Her fingernails, long and perfectly manicured, raked down his face, leaving bright red trails of blood. Dante stumbled back, tripping over his own feet. He grabbed her wrists, trying to hold her off. "Get off me!" he shouted. "You are crazy! You are sleeping with a gym rat!" Tiffany kicked him in the shin with her designer heel. Dante howled in pain. And then instinct took over. The facade of the gentleman crumbled. He raised his hand and slapped her. The sound was like a gunshot. Tiffany flew back, landing hard on the Persian rug. She held her cheek, staring up at him in shock. The room went deadly silent again. Violence. Raw, ugly domestic violence in the middle of a welcome home party. My mother Bernice was sobbing in the corner, clutching her chest. Her perfect family, her testimony, her legacy was destroying itself in front of the very people she lived to impress. Dante stood over his wife, breathing hard, his face bleeding, his suit disheveled. He looked around the room, realizing too late that he had just assaulted his wife in front of 50 witnesses. He looked at me. His eyes were filled with hatred. "You did this," he hissed. "You ruined everything. You are jealous. You are bitter. You did this because you have nothing." I walked over to the laptop and shut it down. The screen went black. The show was over. "I didn't do this, Dante," I said calmly. "I just turned on the lights. The roaches were already there." Tiffany started to get up, sobbing, her makeup running down her face in black streaks. She looked at Dante with pure loathing. "I am calling the police," she spat. "I am pressing charges. You do not need to call them," I said. I walked to the front window and pulled back the heavy velvet drape. Outside, the driveway was bathed in the flashing blue and red lights of 3 police cruisers and 2 unmarked sedans. They had been waiting for my signal. I turned back to the room. "They are already here," I said. Dante ran to the window. He saw the officers getting out of the cars. He saw Special Agent Miller putting on his tactical vest. "What did you do?" Dante whispered, terror finally breaking through his arrogance. "I audited you," I said. The front door burst open. Agent Miller led the way, his badge gleaming under the foyer chandelier. "Dante Williams," he announced, his voice booming through the house. "You are under arrest for bank fraud, wire fraud, identity theft, and elder abuse." 2 officers moved in on Dante. He didn't fight. He slumped, all the fight draining out of him as the metal cuffs clicked around his wrists. Another officer walked over to Tiffany. "Tiffany Miller," he said. "We have a warrant for your arrest regarding conspiracy to commit fraud and receipt of stolen property." Tiffany screamed. "No, I am the victim." He hit me. "Look at my face. You can file a report downtown," the officer said, pulling her hands behind her back. "But right now, you are coming with us." They dragged them out. My brother and his wife. The kings and queens of Buckhead were marched out of the house in handcuffs, past the horrified faces of the church choir and the bridge club. I watched them go. I felt nothing. No joy. No sadness. Just the cold satisfaction of the equation finally balanced. The guests began to scramble for the exits, murmuring apologies, trying to distance themselves from the disaster as quickly as possible. Pastor Jenkins paused at the door. He looked at me, then at my sobbing mother, and shook his head before walking out into the night. Finally, it was just me, my mother, and the ruins of her vanity. She sat on the floor, weeping into her hands. The gold dress was wrinkled. The ruby brooch was crooked. Why, she wailed. Why did you have to do it like this? Why couldn't you just talk to us? I looked down at her. Because you wouldn't have listened. Mom, I said. You never listened to the help. I picked up my purse. The police will want a statement from you, I said. And after that you have some packing to do. I walked out the front door, past the police cars, past my brother sitting in the back seat of a cruiser with his head against the window. I got into my G-Wagon. I didn't look back. The audit was complete. The assets were seized. The liabilities were liquidated. And for the first time in my life, my balance sheet was perfectly clean. The flashing lights of the police cruisers faded into the distance, carrying my brother and his wife away to a reality they were entirely unprepared for. The silence they left behind was not empty. It was heavy. It was thick with the wreckage of a family that had imploded in spectacular fashion. The party guests had fled like rats from a sinking ship, muttering apologies and clutching their pearls, desperate to distance themselves from the scandal. But not everyone had left. Pastor Jenkins remained. He stood by the fireplace, his hands clasped in front of him, his face a mask of shock and spiritual indigestion. He looked like a man who had just realized he had been blessing a den of thieves for a decade. And my mother Bernice stood in the center of the room, trembling. For a moment, she just stared at the open front door where her golden son had been dragged out in handcuffs. Then slowly she turned to me. Her eyes were not filled with remorse. They were filled with a hatred so pure it felt like physical heat radiating across the room. She looked at the projector screen, which had gone dark, and then at the remnants of the catering she had not paid for. "You are a demon," she hissed, her voice low and venomous. "You are a jealous, bitter, ungrateful demon. You destroyed this family. Are you happy now? You sent your own brother to jail. You humiliated your sister-in-law. You made a mockery of me in front of the church." I stood my ground. I did not flinch. "I did not destroy this family, Mother," I said calmly. "I just exposed the termites that were eating the foundation. You did this. You built this disaster brick by brick." She screamed then, a raw, guttural sound of frustration. She picked up a crystal champagne flute and hurled it at me. It shattered against the wall a foot from my head, showering me with glass shards. Pastor Jenkins flinched, taking a step back. "I gave you life," she screamed, advancing on me. "I raised you. I put a roof over your head. And this is how you repay me, by airing our dirty laundry, by counting pennies. So what if I used your credit card? I am your mother. What is yours is mine. That is how family works. But you cold-hearted little accountant, you never understood love. You only understand numbers. You are dead to me, Zara. Do you hear me? You are dead to me." I brushed a shard of glass from my shoulder. "I have been dead to you for a long time, Mom," I said. "Ever since I stopped being useful. But you are wrong about one thing. I am not the one who betrayed this family, and I am not the only one you tried to bury." I pulled my phone out and sent a single text message to the nurse waiting in the hallway. "Showtime." I looked at my mother. "You think the police were the finale," I said, "but they were just the opening act. You asked if I was happy. I am not happy, Bernice. I am seeking justice. And there is one more witness who has something to say about your definition of love." Bernice sneered. "Who? Another bank teller? Another detective? I do not care who you bring in here. I am the matriarch of this family. I am the victim here." The sound of the front door opening cut her off. The rhythmic whir of an electric motor hummed in the foyer. Bernice froze. She knew that sound. It was the sound of a high-end wheelchair, the kind she had refused to buy for her own mother 3 years ago because she said it was too expensive. The wheelchair rolled into the living room. Pushing it was a uniformed nurse from the private agency I had hired, and sitting in the chair looking frail but fierce, wearing a soft new cardigan and holding a Bible in her lap, was Hazel Washington. My mother stopped breathing. Her face went from red to a terrifying shade of gray. Her eyes bulged. She stumbled back, gripping the edge of the sofa to keep from collapsing. She looked at the woman in the wheelchair, then at me, then back at the woman. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish on dry land. "Mama," she whispered. The word came out as a squeak. It was impossible. It was a hallucination. She had attended the funeral. She had picked out the casket. She had accepted the casseroles and the sympathy cards. She had told the world her mother was dead. Hazel Washington lifted her head, her eyes sharp and clear, locked onto her daughter. "Hello, Bernice," Grandma said. Her voice was raspy, but it carried to every corner of the room. Bernice let out a shriek that sounded more animal than human. She scrambled backward, knocking over a side table. "No," she screamed. "No. You are dead. You died. I buried you. I have the death certificate. This is a trick. Zara, what kind of sick game is this? That is not her. That is an actor. You hired an actor to torment me." She refused to believe her own eyes because believing them meant admitting to a crime so heinous there was no coming back from it. I stepped forward. "It is no trick, Mom," I said. "It is Grandma. The woman you checked into Sunny Meadows 2 years ago. The woman you told us died of a stroke. The woman whose pension checks you have been cashing every month to pay for your facelifts and your son's gambling debts." Grandma Hazel wheeled herself forward. She stopped a few feet from where Bernice was cowering. "I waited for you," Bernice, Grandma said, tears tracking through the deep lines on her face. "I sat in that room with the cockroaches and the smell of urine, and I waited. You told me it was temporary. You told me you were fixing up the house for me, and then you stopped coming." Bernice was shaking her head violently, her hands over her ears. "Stop it," she moaned. "Stop talking. You are dead. Go away." "I asked the nurses." Grandma continued, her voice gaining strength. "I asked them where my daughter was. They said you told them not to let me use the phone. They said you told them I was senile, that I was violent. You locked me away like a dog, Bernice." I stepped in, holding up the documents I had retrieved from the safe. "You forged the death certificate," I said, looking at the pastor to make sure he heard every word. "You paid a crooked coroner in the next county $5,000 to sign off on a body that did not exist. You held a closed casket funeral with an empty box. You stood right there in that church in front of this man, and you wept fake tears while your mother was sleeping on a stained mattress 10 miles away. Pastor Jenkins looked like he was going to be sick." He looked at Bernice with a mixture of horror and revulsion. "Sister Bernice," he said, his voice trembling. "Is this true? Is this Sister Hazel?" Bernice looked up at him. She saw the judgment in his eyes. She saw her social standing evaporating like mist. "Pastor," she pleaded, crawling toward him on her knees. "You do not understand. It was complicated. The money. Dante needed the money. He was in trouble. I had to help him. Mama was sick. She was not going to make it anyway. I just sped up the paperwork. It was for the family. It was for the greater good." "You stole my life," Grandma Hazel said, pointing a shaking finger at her daughter. "You stole the last years of my life. You stole my dignity. And you did it to buy things." She looked at the handbag Bernice was clutching. It was a Birkin. It cost $20,000. "I sat in the dark eating cold oatmeal so you could buy that bag," Grandma said. "I prayed for death, Bernice. I prayed God would take me because I thought my family had thrown me away. But God sent Zara instead." Bernice turned to me, her eyes wild. "You," she spat. "You dug her up. You could not just let it be." We were happy, Zara. We were finally happy. We had the money, we had the status. Why did you have to ruin it? Why do you hate me so much? I looked at the woman who had given birth to me. I looked at the woman who had abandoned me at an airport, who had stolen my identity, who had buried her mother alive. And I felt the last tether of obligation snap. I do not hate you, Mom, I said. I pity you. You sold your soul for a first-class ticket and a designer label, and now the bill is due. Pastor Jenkins stepped forward. He seemed to grow taller, his authority returning. He was a man who tolerated a lot of sins, but this was biblical in its depravity. Bernice Williams, he boomed, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings. You have desecrated the sanctity of life. You have lied to God. You have lied to this congregation. You stood on my altar and testified about blessings that were stolen from the blood of your own mother. Bernice reached for the hem of his jacket. Pastor, please. I can explain. I will tithe. I will give double. Do not touch me, he said, pulling away as if she were contagious. You are no longer welcome in the house of the Lord. I am stripping you of your title as head of the auxiliary board. I am removing your name from the donor wall, and I am telling the congregation exactly what you did. You are cast out, Bernice. May God have mercy on your soul, because I certainly do not. He turned to Grandma Hazel. He bowed his head. Sister Hazel, he said softly, I am so sorry. We did not know. We mourned you. I know, Pastor, she said. I forgive you, but I do not forgive her. The pastor nodded. He looked at me with a newfound respect. You did a righteous thing today, Sister Zara, he said. He turned and walked out the front door, leaving the door open to the humid night air. Bernice collapsed on the rug. She was alone. Her son was in jail. Her daughter-in-law was in jail. Her church had rejected her. Her mother had condemned her. And her daughter, the one she had called a failure, was the only one left standing. She looked up at me. Her makeup was ruined. Her face was a mask of despair. Zara, she whimpered, help me, please. They took Dante. The pastor left. I have nobody. I have nothing. You cannot leave me like this. I am your mother. I looked at her. I felt the weight of the deed in my pocket. The legal document that said this house, this furniture, this very floor she was crying on belonged to me. I am not leaving you, Mom, I said. I am evicting you. She blinked, not understanding. What I bought the mortgage, Bernice, I said. Dante forged my signature to take out a third loan against this house. He defaulted 3 months ago. The bank was going to foreclose next week. I bought the note. I am the bank now. And I am calling the loan. You cannot do that, she whispered. This is my house. It was your house, I corrected. Now it is my asset. And you are trespassing. I looked at my watch. It is 9 p.m. I am giving you 1 hour. 1 hour to pack a bag, one bag. Not the Hermes, a garbage bag. You can take your clothes. You can take your toiletries. You cannot take the jewelry. You cannot take the art. You cannot take anything that was bought with Grandma's money or my credit card. Where will I go? She wailed. I have nowhere to go. I pulled a piece of paper from my pocket. It was a brochure. I made a reservation for you, I said, at Sunny Meadows. Her eyes widened in horror. No, she gasped. Not there. Please, Zara. Anything but there. It smells. The food is terrible. The nurses are mean. I know, I said. Grandma told me all about it. But do not worry. I paid for a whole month in advance. It is the least I could do. After all, family takes care of family, right? I turned to the security guards, who had been standing silently by the wall. Gentlemen, I said, please escort Miss Williams to her room to pack. Make sure she only takes personal items. If she tries to take anything valuable, add it to the police report. And when she is done, drive her to Sunny Meadows. The guards stepped forward. They were big men. They did not look like they tolerated nonsense. Bernice scrambled to her feet. She looked at me one last time. There was no love in her eyes. only fear and hate. "You will burn in hell for this," she spat. I smiled. Maybe, I said. But at least I will have a first-class ticket paid for with my own money. She was led away screaming and cursing up the stairs of the house she used to rule. I walked over to Grandma Hazel. She was tired. Her hands were shaking. "Are you okay, Grandma?" I asked, kneeling beside her chair. She looked at the empty room. She looked at the shattered champagne flute. She looked at me. "I am tired, baby," she said. "I just want to go home." I nodded. "Let us go home, Grandma." I wheeled her out of the house down the ramp I had installed that afternoon. We went to my car. I helped her into the passenger seat. I looked back at the house one last time. The lights were blazing. It looked beautiful. It looked perfect. It was a tomb. I got into the driver's seat and started the engine. "Where are we going?" Grandma asked. "We are going to my house," I said. "It is not as big as this one, but it is paid for. And the fridge is full of food I bought myself." "That sounds like heaven," she said. I drove away. I did not look in the rearview mirror. The audit was closed. The balance was zero. And for the first time in my life, I was truly completely free. The morning sun did not bring warmth to the estate in Buckhead. It brought a harsh, unforgiving light that exposed every crack in the plaster and every stain on the carpet. The party was over. The guests were gone. The adrenaline of the night before had faded, replaced by the grim reality of federal law enforcement and forensic accounting. I sat on the Italian leather sofa in the center of the living room. It was the same spot where my mother had held court for years, dispensing judgment and demands. Now it was my seat of judgment. My mother Bernice sat on a wooden dining chair across from me. She looked small. The gold dress from last night was wrinkled and stained with wine. Her wig was slightly askew. She was trembling not from cold, but from the realization that the nightmare she thought she had woken up from was actually her new permanent reality. The front door stood open. 2 federal agents were escorting Dante out. This was not the theatrical arrest of the night before. This was the processing. This was the end of Dante Global Ventures. He was still wearing his bespoke suit, but it looked like a costume now. His hands were cuffed in front of him, and he was carrying a small box of personal effects. He stopped when he saw me. His eyes were red and swollen. He looked at me, and for a moment I thought I saw regret. But then his lip curled. "You think you won, Zara," he spat. "But you are going to be alone. You cut off your own flesh and blood. Who is going to come to your funeral?" I took a sip of my coffee. It was hot, black, and bitter. "The people who respect me, Dante," I said calmly. "And unlike yours, my funeral will be paid for with legal tender." Agent Miller nudged him forward. "Move it, Mr. Williams. You have a long day ahead of you." I watched my brother, the golden child, the prince of the family, get shoved into the back of an unmarked sedan. He was facing charges of bank fraud, wire fraud, aggravated identity theft, and tax evasion. The federal guidelines suggested a sentence of 10 to 15 years. He would be 50 years old when he got out. He would have nothing. I turned my attention back to the room. Tiffany was standing by the staircase. She was trying to look dignified, but it is hard to look dignified when you are holding a garbage bag filled with your clothes. Her parents, the wealthy Millers from Savannah, had called an hour ago. I had made sure they received a digital copy of the dossier, including the photos of Tiffany and her personal trainer in the elevator. Her father, a man who valued reputation above oxygen, had been brief. He told her she was cut off. He told her the trust fund was frozen. He told her not to come home until the divorce was final and the scandal had died down, which likely meant never. Tiffany looked at me. Her eyes were full of venom. "I hope you choke on this house," she said. "I hope it rots around you." I smiled. "It won't rot, Tiffany," I said. "I am having it fumigated as soon as you leave." She hefted the garbage bag over her shoulder. She had tried to pack her jewelry box, but the agents had seized it as evidence of proceeds from fraud. She had tried to take the Hermes bags, but I had shown the receipt proving I paid for them. She was leaving with the sweatpants she arrived in and a tube of toothpaste. "You are a monster," she whispered. I am a creditor, I corrected her, and your account is closed. Get out. She walked out the door, her heels clicking on the marble for the last time. She did not look at Dante's car. She walked straight past it to the curb where a yellow taxi was waiting. No Uber Black, no limousine. Just a yellow cab to take her to a motel she would have to pay for with cash she probably pawned her wedding ring to get. The door clicked shut. Now it was just me and Bernice. The house was quiet. The silence stretched between us heavy with 35 years of unspoken truths. Bernice looked up at me. Her eyes were wet. They took him, she whispered. They took my baby boy. He took himself. Mom, I said. He stole. He lied. He broke the law. He did it for us, she wailed. He wanted us to have a good life. He wanted to be a man. He wanted to be a parasite, I said. And you let him. You fed him. You fed him my money. You fed him Grandma's life. I reached into my briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper. It was thick legal bond. It had a red stamp on it. I placed it on the coffee table in front of me. This is a notice to quit, I said. It is an eviction order. Bernice stared at the paper. She did not touch it. Eviction? She asked, her voice trembling. Yes, I said. I bought the mortgage note from the bank, Mom. I own the debt. And since the borrower, Dante, has defaulted and is currently in federal custody, I am exercising my right to foreclose. But this is my home, she cried. Your father bought this house. I raised you in this house. My father left this house to both of us, I said, my voice hardening. And you let Dante steal my equity to pay his gambling debts. You signed the papers, Mom. I saw your signature on the witness line. You helped him steal my inheritance. You forfeited your right to this roof the day you chose his greed over my security. She slid off the chair. She fell to her knees on the rug. She clasped her hands together in a prayer position. Zara, please, she begged. Have mercy. I am your mother. Where will I go? I have no money. The accounts are frozen. You have a reservation, I said. I pulled out a brochure and tossed it onto the table next to the eviction notice. Sunny Meadows, I said. Bernice recoiled as if I had thrown a snake at her. No, she gasped. Not there. You cannot put me there. It is a dump. It smells like death. It was good enough for your mother, I said coldly. It was good enough for the woman who gave you life. You left her there for 2 years. You let her sleep in urine. You let her starve. Why is it not good enough for you? Because I am different, she screamed. I am Bernice Williams. I am a lady. I cannot live with those people. I stood up. I walked over to her and looked down. You are not a lady, Mom. You are a criminal. You are an accomplice to fraud. The only reason you are not in the back of that police car with Dante is because I convinced the district attorney that you were a senile old woman who was manipulated by her son. I saved you from prison, Mom. This is my mercy. She grabbed the hem of my pants. I did it because he is a boy. She shrieked, the truth finally tearing its way out of her throat. He is my son. He needed me. You were always so strong, Zara. You were independent. You didn't need help. You had your little job. You were fine. But Dante, the world is hard on black men. I had to protect him. He is the heir. I froze. There it was. The black tax, the misogyny, the golden child syndrome, all wrapped up in one pathetic confession. I kicked my leg free from her grasp. He is not the heir, I said, my voice shaking with suppressed rage. He is a bum. And I am not strong because I wanted to be. I am strong because you forced me to carry the weight of this entire family on my back since I was 16 years old. I paid the bills. I fixed the credit. I bailed him out. And you punished me for it. You punished me for being competent. I walked to the window. I saw a large moving truck pulling into the driveway. Your hour is up, I said. I picked up my phone and dialed a number. Send them in. The front door opened. 4 burly movers walked in. They were carrying large industrial trash bags. What is happening? Bernice cried, scrambling to her feet. I am clearing out the property, I said. I pointed to the shelves lined with fake Louis Vuitton bags, the closet full of knockoff Chanel, the cabinet stuffed with replica jewelry she bought to impress her church friends. Everything that is a replica goes in the trash. I ordered the movers. Everything that was bought with stolen funds goes to the police evidence locker. Everything else goes to storage at Sunny Meadows. The movers went to work. They were efficient. They swept the shelves clean. They dumped the fake bags into the trash liners. My mother screamed. She tried to grab a bag from one of the men. "That is my Birkin," she yelled. "It is plastic, Mom," I shouted back. "It is fake. Just like you." I walked over to the fireplace. There was a portrait of the family above the mantel. It was taken 10 years ago. Dante was in the center, smiling. My mother was sitting next to him, looking adoringly at his face. I was standing in the back half, obscured by a shadow. I took the painting down. I smashed it over my knee. The frame cracked with a satisfying snap. I tossed the pieces into the nearest trash bag. "This house is being sold," I said to my weeping mother. "I am listing it tomorrow. And do you know what I am going to do with the money?" She looked up, hope flickering in her eyes for a split second. "Are you going to bail Dante out?" she asked. I laughed. It was a harsh barking sound. "No, I am starting a foundation, the Hazel Washington Foundation for Elder Abuse Prevention. Every single dime from the sale of this house is going to pay for lawyers to hunt down people like you, people who steal from their parents, people who bury the living." Bernice wailed. It was a sound of total defeat. The lead mover approached me. "Ms. Williams, the bedroom is cleared. We packed one suitcase of clothes for the lady. The rest is trash." "Thank you," I said. "Please escort her to the vehicle." Two movers gently but firmly took Bernice by the arms. She went limp. She didn't fight anymore. She just sobbed, a broken woman who had gambled her family on a lie and lost everything. They walked her out the door. I followed them. Outside, a van from Sunny Meadows was waiting. It was a shuttle bus for transporting residents. It was old and rusted. They helped her into the bus. She sat by the window looking out at the house she had lost. I walked up to the window. "I put $50 in your commissary account," I said. "Use it for soap." She looked at me. Her eyes were empty. "You are cruel, Zara," she whispered. I leaned in close. "No, Mom. I am just balancing the ledger. You spent your retirement on a first-class flight to Dubai. Now you are paying for the return trip." I tapped the side of the bus. "Drive safe," I told the driver. The bus pulled away, spewing black smoke. I watched it go until it turned the corner and disappeared. I turned back to the house. The movers were hauling out bags of trash. The lawn was littered with the detritus of a fake life. I took a deep breath. The air smelled of gasoline and cut grass. It smelled clean. I walked to my G-Wagon. My grandmother was waiting for me at the hospital. I had a flight to book. Not to Dubai. To Paris. For two. I got in the car and started the engine. I didn't look back at the house. It was just a building now. The ghosts were gone, and I was finally truly rich. 3 months later, the gavel came down on the life of Dante Williams. I was not there to see it. I did not need to be. My lawyer sent me the transcript. My brother, the man who thought he was too smart for a 9-to-5 job, stood before a federal judge and tried to charm his way out of a felony indictment. He cried. He blamed his upbringing. He even tried to blame me, claiming I had entrapped him. The judge was not impressed. He sentenced Dante to 8 years in federal prison for bank fraud, aggravated identity theft, and tax evasion. He is currently sitting in a 6x8 cell in a low-security facility in Alabama. There are no Italian suits there. There are no gold chains. There is just a gray jumpsuit and a commissary account that sits at zero because I made sure every cent he had was seized to pay back the bank. He writes me letters. I do not open them. I have them shredded. I heard from a cousin that he spends his yard time telling the other inmates about the empire he is going to build when he gets out. They laugh at him. He is not a king anymore. He is just inmate number 8940. Tiffany did not fare much better. The divorce was swift and brutal. Since the marriage was based on fraud, the prenuptial agreement she thought would save her was voided. She left the marriage with exactly what she brought into it, which was absolutely nothing. Her parents stuck to their word. They refused to let her come home to Savannah. The shame of her affair and the public arrest was too much for their social standing. Last I heard, Tiffany is working the night shift at a 24-hour diner off the interstate. She wears a polyester uniform that smells like grease and stale coffee. The woman who once lectured me about the proper way to eat caviar is now serving Grand Slam breakfasts to truckers at 3 in the morning. I drove by there once just to see. I watched her from the parking lot. She looked tired. Her roots were showing. She got yelled at by a manager for dropping a plate. She looked miserable. I did not go in. I did not order food. I just watched for a moment, acknowledged the karma, and drove away. And then there is Bernice, my mother, the matriarch who sold her soul for a handbag. The eviction was carried out by the sheriff department. They put her things on the curb in the rain. She screamed, she threatened, she quoted scripture. But in the end, she was just an old woman with bad credit and no friends. The church had completely ostracized her. Pastor Jenkins made her a cautionary tale in his Sunday sermon. The friends she tried to impress pretended they did not know her. She lives in a subsidized housing complex on the south side of the city now. It is a small one-bedroom apartment with thin walls and a view of a dumpster. Her pension is garnished to pay back the money she stole from Grandma. She has enough to eat barely. She has a roof over her head. It is more than she gave her own mother. I have been told she spends her days sitting on a folding chair outside her door, telling anyone who will listen about her ungrateful daughter who stole her mansion. She tells them she used to be rich. She tells them she used to fly first class. The neighbors just nod and keep walking. They know a liar when they see one. But I am not thinking about them today. I am thinking about the clouds. I look out the window of the Airbus A380. We are cruising at 35,000 feet, somewhere over the Indian Ocean. The sky is a brilliant, piercing blue. The air in the private suite smells of fresh orchids and expensive leather. This is real first class, not a stolen seat bought with fraud. This is the fruit of my labor. This is the reward for my sanity. I look across the aisle. Ideally, the partition would be up for privacy, but I have it down. In the suite next to me, Grandma Hazel is awake. She is wearing a silk pajama set I bought her in London. She is reclining in her seat, which is more comfortable than any bed she has slept in for the last 2 years. She is watching a movie on the massive screen and eating a bowl of fresh berries. She looks healthy. Her cheeks are full. Her eyes are bright. The terror of sunny meadows is fading, replaced by the peace of knowing she is safe, loved, and protected. She catches me looking at her and smiles. "This is nice, baby," she says, gesturing to the crystal glass of sparkling apple juice in her hand. "Better than bingo." I laugh. It is a genuine, deep sound that comes from my belly. It is much better than bingo, Grandma. I agree. I pick up my phone to check the time. We are an hour away from landing in Malé. From there, we will take a seaplane to a private island resort in the Maldives. We are going to spend 2 weeks doing absolutely nothing but watching the ocean and eating fresh seafood. No drama, no fraud, no family obligations. I see a notification on my screen. It is a text message from an unknown number. I hesitate. I know who it is. I should just delete it. But curiosity, that old forensic instinct, makes me open it. It reads, "Zara, please. It is Mom. I am hungry. The check was late this month. I have nothing in the fridge. Please just send me $50. I will pay you back. I promise. I am your mother. Do not let me starve." I stare at the words. $50. That is less than the cost of the bottle of wine sitting on my tray table. It is a microscopic amount of money to me now. I remember the $200 she handed me at the airport. I remember the look on her face when she walked away. I remember the empty fridge in my house when I came back from burying my husband. She is not starving. She has food stamps. She has a roof. She is just fishing. She is testing the fence, seeing if there is a weak spot, seeing if the guilt still works. It does not. I do not feel anger. I do not feel sadness. I feel nothing. It is a beautiful empty silence where the obligation used to be. I do not reply. I do not type out a lecture. I do not remind her of what she did. She knows what she did. I simply tap the info icon at the top of the screen. I scroll down to the bottom. I press the button that says Block Caller. The message disappears. The link is severed. I put the phone down on the side table. I pick up my wine glass. The liquid is cool and crisp. I look over at Grandma. She has paused her movie. She is looking out the window at the clouds below us. Grandma, I say softly. She turns to me. Yes, honey. We are starting our descent, I say. We are almost there. She smiles. Her eyes crinkle on the corners just like my father's used to. I am ready, she says. I have been ready for a long time. I lean back in my seat. The seat hums as I adjust it to a landing position. I look out the window. The ocean below is turquoise dotted with emerald islands. It looks like paradise. For the first time in 35 years, I am not worrying about the next crisis. I am not waiting for the other shoe to drop. I am not carrying the weight of ungrateful people on my back. I am just Zara. I am the CEO of my own life, and I am finally truly flying. The pilot's voice comes over the intercom, smooth and reassuring. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Maldives. The local time is noon. The temperature is 85 degrees. Thank you for flying with us. I close my eyes and take a deep breath. We made it, I whisper to the empty air. And for the first time, I know that I am exactly where I am supposed to be. This story teaches us a brutal but necessary truth. Blood does not guarantee loyalty, and being a good family member should never come at the cost of your own dignity or financial survival. Zara's journey proves that true power lies in competence, self-reliance, and the courage to audit your own life. Breaking free from toxic cycles often requires ruthless boundaries. Sometimes the greatest act of self-love is recognizing when you are being used as an asset rather than loved as a human being, and having the strength to close that account forever. Peace is expensive, but it is worth every penny. If you've ever had to cut off a toxic family member to save yourself, share your story in the comments below.